We're good? Okay. Oh, cool. Great. We're going to kick things off. Excellent. Welcome, everyone, to the last session for DevLearn 2025 over here on stage A. Quickly, I'm Tammy Rutherford, the Managing Director at Rustici Software, and with me is Mark Richards.
Yeah, so I'm Mark Richards. I'm the Director of Strategic Program Management for LKQ Corporation, basically responsible for a few years now of our online learning ecosystem. So we're going to go through how we at LKQ basically improved our whole training and delivery and efficiency, and how we leveraged a bit of an operational mindset onto it. So in regards to our L&D strategy, what we've done is actually centralize content as opposed to our LMS. So all of our processes historically were based around what our end users do. Now, we actually took the opportunity a few years back to move our LMS, and part of that allowed us to actually centralize and coordinate and solve our content problem with versioning and everything else. So that allowed us to leverage some automation from Rustici, and it allowed us to kind of start pivoting our people and processes towards a more strategic viewpoint. The second piece of that was a knock-on effect that we didn't realize, that we're a global company, and you'll learn more about LKQ in a second, and that multi-language requirements for us with a ton of versioning, different managerial levels, a ton of other variables that kick into it, allowed us to start organizing our assignments, our rosters, our availability and everything else. And it actually allowed us to have a much more stable and reliable learning experience for every one of our employees.
Yeah, so as LKQ is going down this journey of really rethinking things and bringing content to the center of the entire L&D strategy, it did require bringing in some additional software, which is where Rustici software comes into play. So we were able to provide Content Controller, which is a centralized content management and distribution solution. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But doing so enabled Mark and his team at LKQ to not only streamline their approach to content and their L&D processes, but that had, as Mark likes to say, a knock-on effect around learner experience, a more consistent learner experience, and even a hidden gem that showed up along the way, facilitating an LMS migration that they discovered 2 years into using Content Controller. So we'll dive in a little bit more now before we get into exactly what LKQ is doing today and how they got there. Quick background story. Have you all ever used a standard called SCORM or XAPI? Or so you're probably familiar with who Rustici Software is then. We've been working with the standard since 2002. So we specialize in making systems and content work well together. And the products that you'll most often see from Rustici are SCORM Cloud. So if you've ever tested content, you've used our SCORM Cloud product. Rustici Engine, which works behind the scenes for many LMSs in the market. So a lot of the LMSs that you've seen out here this week at DevLearn. And then Content Controller, which is our content distribution product that we'll talk about more with LKQ's use case.
Yeah, and a little bit about LKQ. So we have a ton of complexity to our business. We are global. We're in 20 plus countries. We have around about 45,000 employees. And with that comes a requirement to have thousands and thousands of learning objects, right? So over the past few years, when I first picked up this platform, we had thousands of pieces of content that were completely disorganized. They were in our LMS, and we had to kind of find a way to really hone in on the processes of managing that. Along with that, we also scaled pretty quickly from the 2018 period through to 2021, 2022, and we went from 16,000 learners to around about 45,000 across those countries and those languages. So we really had to operate fast to get our processes aligned. And what we've actually done is we've structured our entire team slightly differently from the conventional L&D and online training structure that you might see. And we've actually built it so that content sits at the middle of it. So if we were to talk about the content piece alone, the way I treat that is basically as being our inventory. It is our piece that our customer needs to buy. If you're in retail, it's the parts that people are buying from you, it's the products, whatever. We sat that central, and then our systems team, our LMS manager, our LMS management team, they fundamentally become the ones that, from an IT management point of view, enable our end user to get to that experience. And then our design team can basically focus on the future sales and marketing by building what they need to do to get our new products onto the shelf. So that's our kind of structure, and the rationale behind that was actually to treat content as then the distribution center. So it doesn't matter if we were buying something in or if we were making it ourselves. Content Controller allowed us to kind of plonk it straight in the middle and become that distribution center that people can buy from. Now, we would then take that distribution center and hub and spoke it effectively to the LMS. So instead of having thousands of pieces of content in our LMS or in our system, we actually migrated them into the back of house so people couldn't see them. We give the keys to the kingdom to a few people, but ultimately it means our end users are seeing the woods through the trees from a lean perspective. Shall I go to the next slide, Tammy? And then we actually went to Rustici to LTG to discuss an LXP back in 2018 for a video editing or video hosting site. And this is where like the light bulb moment came for us. We were sat there in a room and basically explaining how we hated versioning, we hated language equivalencies, like we hated trying to organize this because the amount of work that it created in terms of updating rosters, updating transcripts, redoing assignments, ticking into the reporting, like there was communications, etc. It was such a convoluted and difficult process where we had around about 56, 57 steps that ultimately took up so much time from a manpower and administration point of view. What Content Controller did immediately when we were shown it is we looked at it and said, there is a huge opportunity for process optimization here. So it was an absolute light bulb moment for us.
Awesome. Yeah, so that was, whenever we talk to Content Controller customers, we have a few light bulb moments that come off. It was originally designed to distribute content across multiple LMSs. And in this case, we're really focused on one LMS, but it still does the same job. So at the heart of Content Controller, it is a content management distribution solution. That hub and spoke model that Mark talked about is exactly what we're looking at here. So you have one core catalog, one system of truth for your content, and it handles any standard. So the standards that Content Controller can support are all of the flavors of SCORM, XAPI, CMI5, LTI, AICC, and then we have MP3, MP4, and PDF support as well. So a variety of training content supports. You bring your content into Content Controller, you test it, you configure it, and then you share access out to these LMSs in this hub-spoke model as proxy files or links. And the key there is that the content doesn't move. The learner is coming to the content via their LMS and these proxy files versus distributing or broadcasting your content and putting it on all of these different LMSs. So it gives you this ability to store your content once. You have a master file, which allows you to manage all of your content updates and versions in one place. So as soon as those content updates are made, the next launch, that learner is seeing the right version of the course, the one you intended for them to see. So it gives you a lot of wins as it relates to managing your content, not only from version control, but access control as well. Because that content is only living on your servers, you can cut off access. So if at some point in time you decide that you don't want that LMS or that partner or that customer to be able to access your courses anymore, you can remove access. So it gives you full control on that side of things. Couple of other fun points here that we're going to get to a little bit later. We've been able to build in multilingual content support, so it streamlines how you can manage courses that are available in multiple languages. And we'll talk more about that. We call it equivalence. But again, a big win, having all of your content in one place gives you a lot of flexibility on how you manage that learner experience and even administrator experiences. And then lastly, we've got data, and data is all in one place as well. So if the course is there, all of the data associated with every launch coming from all of those different systems gives you the ability to see reporting and analytics in very aggregate ways to look across libraries of content, and it allows you to go very deep and look at learner level analysis as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about how LKQ is doing all of those things. Kicking it off though with versioning, right? That's, I think, the biggest win, or the first big win.
Yeah, so versioning's always been like a bit of a challenge for us, and I think a lot of people who are at this whole event here would ultimately struggle with versioning. So as I mentioned, we went from around about 56 to 58 steps. We managed with Content Controller to get that down to 4. Now, if you look at this flowchart quickly here on the left, you've got the digital asset replacement itself, whether it's a PDF, video, SCORM, whatever. You then, if you're in like the learning ecosystem, you then have to make sure that the downstream effects of rosters, assignments, transcripts, of in-progress training, any communications, any internal documents need updating as well. Custom pages might need updating with links. And then also the reporting for each of them. Like all of them have to be configured. And then if you've then got language challenges on top of that, where you have to provide something in English, French, and Spanish, German, Italian, how many times do you have to repeat that? So if we were looking at a versioning challenge for us back in 2018, 2019, we were talking about for, let's just say, harassment training in the US, we would have English and Spanish versions. We might have to do that 2 or 3 times just for each one of those courses because they weren't linked, they weren't mapped. And we have started to see some improvements from our LMS over like the last few years, but ultimately like nothing's got close to how Content Controller is actually working for us. The benefit of what we've achieved from this is those 4 steps means that we're not wasting the best part of a day just replacing a course or like half a day replacing a course. We're always able to serve that latest version immediately. And the minute that we update something in Content Controller, we click publish, and now our end users are seeing it. It means that we actually don't need to provide any communications in terms of here's the new link. We don't need to attach any new assignments with a new version. We don't need to go through and update any transcripts or rosters. We can choose to keep the people in progress. So if someone is half the way through it or 3/4 of the way through it, we can leave them in place because the actual content may not have changed that much. And we might just say, okay, that's fine. Or we can completely reset them, right? If it's a complete overhaul and they've got to start again, we have that opportunity to reset them. And then from an internal documents perspective as well, we don't necessarily need to go through and change SharePoint sites or any comms that we might have across the entire business, right? So it really did open up a huge stability piece for us that allowed us to have a really, really coherent and really reliable structure for our people to like actually start leveraging the training that we can offer them. And the amount of times that like we would get a ticket or we would get a request through to be like, hey, can you send me the latest link for this training, this latest forklift training or whatever it is, that completely dissipated by implementing Content Controller.
Awesome. Yeah, I think actually the QR code and URLs is a huge win when you think about having content that's broadcast. In your case, you guys have QR codes on what, forklifts?
Yeah, so we have the opportunity now as well with that stabilized URL. You can create that QR code, and now it creates an opportunity for you to have the QR code in the flow of your work. So if you're talking about like a sales piece or something, you can create that QR code because the URL is static. And then you can place that wherever you want that to be, whether that's in sales, whether that's in operations, whether it's on a forklift. It doesn't really matter where it is. You have that opportunity to really leverage a stable URL that everyone can relate to. And even if I was to turn around and say, look, the LMS does the reversioning for us, ultimately, like for us in our LMS, we still have a point where it says, this isn't the latest version. Do you want to go to the latest version? That's still an added step for the end user, whereas this, nothing changes for them ultimately, and it creates that opportunity for learning in the flow of work.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about the impact of versioning when it comes to reporting here in just a little bit. But just being able to streamline that effect, decide when you move learners depending on the level of change that you're making to a course, whether it's a minor typo or a major regulation change. Many of our customers have found time savings of, hours and days of people's time so they're not administering minor content changes.
I would like to add just one final point on this as well, is like if you look at it from an instructional design point of view, you launch a course and all of a sudden the SME or the business notices that something's wrong in it and it's like the quality check hasn't necessarily gone as well as you wanted it to. There might be a typo. The ability to revert versions in Content Controller is also game-changing. So you might have done all of that legwork historically, then you notice there's a problem, then you have to back it all out again. Content Controller also has that revert function to be able to go back to previous versions as well, which sometimes has been incredibly useful for us.
Yes, it's the safety net, oh no moment that you sometimes get. Yeah, and so as we talk more about managing content at scale, the other benefit here, similar to versioning, is this multi-language support. So in Mark's case, I think at LKQ, you're serving up content in upwards of 25 languages. So one title can look like 25 files. Exponentially gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I just take harassment training across the US and Canada as a whole, right, at the minute, you would have California harassment training for managers, for employees, and you would have that in English, have it in Spanish. You would have all of the other states that require it, so Maine, Delaware, et cetera, Illinois, Chicago. What this allows us to do is consolidate them into that one individual learning piece that says, irrespective of whatever language it is, here is the California harassment training for managers, and that is one file now as opposed to having the language files and having each course separately. So then we can stabilize the assignments on the back end of it by just literally setting that assignment up to be, here is the course, here is the assignment, let it run with all the config of the retraining and reporting and everything else in place. If you then scale that across, let's just say you've got Microsoft Excel training, Now you've got the ability to create a curriculum with all of those languages for Microsoft Excel training together that's going to allow you to structure it and just push that one end piece to the end user that's actually going to actually improve that for them. And you're not going to need to worry necessarily about how your English employees find it, your French employees find it, your German employees find it, or whatever it is. It is just there, and it is the one endpoint for them. Now, the next piece of that is actually it reduces the administrative burden, as I said. Like, you don't need to update the reports, you don't need to update the assignments or anything else. But the nice thing about Content Controller here is, for us, if we have that language set up within that equivalency, the end user, when they launch the course, if it will read their localized language in their browser and by default offer it to them as well. And then at that point, if your user hasn't configured their language settings in your HRIS or LMS, and you're worried or intrigued about what you need to offer as a business, you can then offer them this opportunity here to have the training in their own language. And then, as Tammy mentioned, you have the data on the back end of that as well to maybe see if your audience is actually deferring to their actual preferred language, while the systemic stuff might be in English, right? So you're seeing where they really get to hone in on that personalized piece for them.
Yeah, so this is one of the more exciting features on Content Controller that is, again, sort of a hidden gem for a lot of customers. If you're a multinational organization or you've got content in multiple languages, the ability to streamline the administration of that has been a huge win. And again, giving the learner the ability in their own language to pick what they want to learn as has been a big game changer. We're going to switch gears now and move away from content first moment and think about an LMS for a second. You guys?
Yeah, so as Tammy kind of mentioned, there was a light bulb moment for us of even just signing into Content Controller. And one of the other things that we noticed through this was there's been a couple of moments throughout that process where we've gone, you know what, that is going to work for us here in this aspect as well. I mentioned right at the start, we actually migrated LMS as well from SumTotal to Cornerstone in the early 2023 period. And what we actually realized was where we budgeted 3 to 5 weeks of actual content move time in order to migrate all of our files, update all of our rosters, update all of our assignments, etc. We were able to do the core content that we needed to do within literally a matter of days, because we were able to just literally take out of Content Controller and dump it straight into our new LMS, and it made that absolutely seamless. So the reality is, if you are here for any reason to find a new LMS, or you're struggling with content management yourselves, it is an absolutely paramount piece for us. It's just been a game changer. So what you end up, and this is the reality of it, we push into Content Controller stuff that we've created, stuff that we've bought, and then stuff that we've we've just got it through videos or whatever else. We push it into that distribution center. We push it into that hub, that centralized hub that is Content Controller. And from there, we had our legacy LMS. It was already running into that. We were able to very quickly move it into our new LMS as well, just because of the fact that we could export it en masse from Content Controller, and we had all the roster history there just to literally press the buttons. We weren't messing around with it, and ultimately it allowed us to go straight into our new one.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think this is, again, one of those light bulb moments or hidden gems where we've designed Content Controller to allow content to perform exactly the same across multiple LMSs, whether it's yours internally or for your customers. And in this case, obviously, as you're bringing in new LMSs, whether it's retiring a legacy LMS or even adding in partner and customer LMSs to your ecosystem, it just makes sense, right? So now we're seeing customers really gain that benefit and efficiency of, it's not a lot of time to move this content, and it also is a known quantity. It will behave exactly the same in the new LMS as it did in the old LMS, because Content Controller is ultimately playing that content behind the scenes.
The other knock-on piece, just to add on to this, is actually the reporting side of stuff. So if you were going to move your rosters across and you had version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4, all in your LMS, your LXP, wherever it is, this actually allowed us to not even just worry about that as an impact, because Content Controller is capturing all of that. All we're going to do is migrate the roster against the history, and we've still got the Content Controller information as to which version they took. And we're going to be able to see that on the 11th of May, 2023, we had version 2 up and running, so we can pull that down as well.
That brings us nicely to the last sort of bit of this one, where we talk about data and the importance of and impact of having all of your, if you've got content in the center of your strategy, the data that goes along with it is what you're going to need as well. And having the ability to have that reporting and analytics together in one place provides loads of benefits.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, like we had that piece from the migration where we were able to quickly move our data across without worrying about the nuances of which version it was, which language it was. We were just able to say the marker's completed course A. And at that point, whatever the date was attached to it, we were able to update the rosters accordingly as well. The next piece of that is, from a learner point of view, I mentioned that you guys can understand what language they're actually choosing to take things in. I know like you might be able to think like, oh yeah, we've got every language piece configured, but ultimately like if someone is more natural taking a piece of training in a different language, that can be an incredibly useful insight for you from a communication standpoint. One of the other benefits you can get from this, and this is where we can really get some good feedback, is all of the interactions that you have within that course. You go away and your learners take them, they answer a series of 10 questions or something at the end. You can actually report on those on an individual level, and you can actually report on them at an aggregated level as well, which is going to allow you to see some trends, to see whether or not all of the questions are being answered in a similar way, or if they are being answered in a way where everyone gets the wrong question or one question wrong. You're going to be able to kind of make some really quick and simple adjustments to that course and reversion them to either correct the question verbiage and wording, or go through the course and say, actually, we don't cover this topic in enough depth, for example. And because you're not having to reversion the entire thing with 58 million steps, you can now do it in a quick update in Content Controller and get it back up and running, so you use it as a measurement systems analysis.
Yeah, I love that, being able to use it as that feedback loop and having it designed to efficiently let you incorporate those findings. And then for customers that broadly distribute and broadcast their content across multiple LMSs, this gives you the ability to look at content utilization in aggregate across a variety of learning environments and learning audiences. And for those customers, they're able to really figure out what to invest in further, what courses in their library and catalog are driving utilization or not. If you're thinking about language support specifically, understanding you might have translated into 25 languages, but you might discover that over the course of a year, half of those languages aren't being used for some reason. So does that give you an aha moment to say, let's go back to those parts of our organization, let's figure out, are we going to continue to invest in translation for those languages if there's no uptake? So lots of wins on being able to look at this content analytics in aggregate and then going down to that transcript level when necessary. And so in compliance cases, or sometimes you just absolutely need to know for sure, what did this person do on this day for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, and that's another good point with this. If you are seeing that version, you're seeing which course that a user took, you can also create a preview link from it as well. So if it does need to go out to like a legal partner or someone who's dealing with a particular case, you can provide that preview link for them in order to see the relevant training that you've provided them in the past as well.
So big wins when it comes to any sort of regulatory or compliance or high stakes training as well. So obviously we've talked a lot about some of the benefits here when we think about content at the center of your L&D strategy. And when I first started talking about this session together, I was super excited because we hadn't really heard of anybody coming at it from that supply chain mindset or sort of inventory management, if you will. So.
Yeah, and if you look at kind of some of the benefits we've really gained from it is we've seen a huge reduction in not just like the steps, et cetera, but also the number of support tickets. So by structuring it in this way and treating it as a distribution center, we've actually been able to massively reduce our number of tickets. Like we were getting questions on which version do I need to take? What's the latest URL? Like where's the English one? Like the availability, is it right? Like I can't find this version. So all of these completely went out the window to some extent. And we've really tried to focus on that now on making sure that we've got the right thing available to the right people. And that has been absolutely paramount for us, right? It stops that paralysis by analysis. The other piece with it, obviously, I mentioned that we really kind of had that reduction in support tickets. We actually were able to start focusing on our actual course ratings as well and taking into account the feedback that people were giving us. So we set up a quick study to look at it, and we found out that we were roughly getting about 3.5 stars out of 5 in terms of that feedback. But we've seen a growth on that now up to around about 4.5 over a year period, where we've been able to really focus on the quality of content as opposed to dealing with the version of the content. Mentioned we had the 58 steps to 4 steps. That's been game changing for us. And ultimately for us, like content management being at the center of our universe has allowed us to really make it a strategic opportunity for us, and streamlining everything has just been completely and utterly game changing.
It's amazing when things don't break, people are actually a lot happier with their learning experiences. So being
I know,
able
right?
to focus more on that quality versus firefighting or just trying to keep up with every administrative task really allows you all to be the more strategic partner that you're focused on being.
Is there any questions? Has anyone got any questions?
Thank you for joining us all today. We will be here for a little while longer. We've got about an hour and a half left here at DevLearn 25. You can visit us at booth 319, but we'll be hanging out here for the next few minutes as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much.